Hey folks, Casey Fletcher here with Green Algae Control Lake Management. I'd like to take a few minutes to show you our new software that's being developed. It's called DataBass. Right now we're just going to give you kind of a sneak peek. You see our icon here. We're going to double click that to get started. It is still in development, so some of this stuff is going to change, like that splash screen that you just saw. When a program comes up, your first thing you're going to notice is it looks a lot like Excel. And that is because right now it is based in Excel and requires Excel to run. But as I mentioned, it is still in development, so that may or may not change. We hadn't decided that yet. First thing you're going to do when you get up here is you're going to enter some basic information. Lake name, number of anglers, hours fished, acreage, collection method. Most of this is going to be rod and reel. Really, this was designed for the average pond owner so that they can make an honest evaluation of their lake or pond based on catch records, as opposed to hiring $1,000 electric shocking survey or something of that nature. But if you are a professional and you want to use this to analyze the data from electric shocking surveys, that's perfectly fine as well. One thing that we tried to do throughout the program is to use uh, industry standards on everything that we do. For example, relative weights and size categories, leak frequencies, PSDs, CPUEs. May not mean anything to you as a novice pond owner right now, but there's a few help buttons throughout the program that'll help kind of fill you in on the basics of all of those things. And the reason that we really use that um, is so that no matter where you are, like for example, we're in Texas, let's say you live in California, Florida, or New York, doesn't matter. You give this information to any biologist, and they're instantly going to recognize what it is and be able to make sense of it. So no matter where you are, this program can be of use to you. So basically what you do here is on the opening page you're going to enter some general information, length and weight. All length is done in inches, all weight is in pounds, and it's all in decimal, so 12 and a quarter would be entered 12.25. But I've got some actual catch records from a pond here that I am going to cut and paste into the program just to save some time so you can see kind of what the output looks like. And I am going to do a paste special as text because I don't want any of the formatting. Now a couple of things that you'll notice here is in the past the way that we've done this is we've got a chart that says 12.5-inch bass should weigh 0.9 pounds, and you divide the actual weight by the standard weight, and that gives you the relative weight. This tells you that this fish is 91% of what it should weigh, which is good. And you see that everything is color coded. Green is good, yellow is getting on the edge, and red is not so good. But you'll notice our first fish here is 10 inches, but it has no weight. Personally, I don't place a lot of value on weight of fish that are under 12 inches, so you may or may not want to measure those. That's up to you. But you have the option that if you don't measure them, if you only measure the length, you can still have it evaluate that data without affecting your average relative weights. This averages everything by size category. And in largemouth bass, size categories are 8 to 12 inch are considered stock, 12 to 15 inch are considered quality, 15 to 20 preferred, 20 to 25 are memorable, and 25 plus are actually trophy. But for the purposes of this, we just lumped them all into 20 inches plus as memorable. And this gives you just kind of a brief overview of what your population looks like. This is percent distribution. That tells you, and again, this is all color coded, so you see this number is red here, so that means it's a little bit out of the range that it should be. And the average relative weight for these fish is also low. And we'll go to the next page here and give you the graphical data to look at. You'll see that each dot on our map here represents one of our fish that was entered in the length and weight. This solid bar is the standard weight. That's what every fish should weigh. If a dot was directly on this line, it would be 100% relative weight. If it were above the line, it would be 101 or above. And then you'll see this red dotted line here represents 80% relative weight. And really you want all your fish to be above 80%. And then there's another line, if you look real close here, you can see it's kind of a orange dotted line. And this represents 60% relative weight. If you have a fish below 60% relative weight, it's probably best to go ahead and remove that fish. But we'll get into more detail on that later. Now on the right, you'll see here is your percent distribution. It's also referred to as length frequency. You see that 8 to 12 inch bass are 44%. Now you notice this blue bar back here is the average desired percent distribution. So that compared to the actual distribution, you see that we have way too many fish in this one size category, and that is also obvious by their low percent relative weight. So one of the things that we would obviously want to do is we'd want to increase the harvest of fish in this size category. And it does make basic recommendations here based on size category. It considers percent distribution as well as relative weights are all factors that go into making those recommendations. And you'll see on the left here this other graph. Again, it's color coded. You want everything to fall within the green category here. So everything that's below the green category would be a good candidate for harvest. Now you have to disregard these that fall down here because these are the fish that didn't have weights entered for them. Scrolling down further, you'll see what we call the adjusted PSD. Catch records have been found to overestimate your PSD, which PSD is percent size distribution, or also known as proportional stock density. And basically this is how many bass are in the pond that are over 8 inches that are also over 12 inches. And it's healthy ponds are going to be anywhere between 40 to 80. But as I said, the catch records tend to overestimate that, so we adjusted it by taking only 90% of that value. But here, if you're doing an electroshocking survey, you can see that that unadjusted number right there is if you want to use that. And I mentioned earlier the help features. Click on that if you don't understand what PSD is, and it gives you a basic rundown there. CPUE, which is catch per unit of effort. You see that we call it 1.8 fish per angler hour. And there's a rundown of CPUEs if you need help with that. Scrolling down further, you'll see the same information for bluegill. We didn't enter any bluegill data on this, so there's nothing in our graphs here. And by and large, you're not going to have this on catch records. But again, if you're doing electroshocking surveys, you'll have some data in these fields. And that's pretty much it for the fishery side. It's really a lot of information here to kind of take in. So, you know, when you get started with the program, the best thing you can do is keep accurate records. The more accurate your data is, the more accurate your output is going to be. So that's something to keep in mind. Continuing on, we've got a lot of other features packed into our program here, one of which is chemical estimators. Enter your acreage and average depth here, and it will give you a option for chemical. Now, we did not make any recommendations on what type of product to use or at what rate to use it. All of that information can be found on the product label, and it's highly recommended that you follow the label strictly. But anyway, once you get all that figured out, you enter the desired treatment rate here, and it will tell you, based on these numbers, your acreage and average depth, how many gallons or how many pounds of whatever product it is that it would take to treat that volume of water. Then it also gives you an estimated cost, and the cost can change based on whatever price you're getting for your product, and you can change that here to suit your needs. And again, there's a few help features here. If you're not familiar with ClearCache, you can click on that and it'll give you the general rundown on it. Moving on, tank mixes. A lot of products call for percent solution. Like if you're using a glyphosate, you may want to use a 2% solution. So enter your desired solution here. Size of your tank, 4-gallon tank, that's going to be 10 ounces. If you have a 25-gallon tank, that's going to be 64 ounces, and so on and so forth. Salt and salinity. I don't recommend the addition of salt, but there are some people that swear by it, so I threw this in there. And again, this pulls off of the acreage and average depth from above. So you enter your desired part per thousand, tells you how many pounds of salt it would take to get you to that part per thousand. Next feature is ick treatments with copper sulfate. This can be a tricky subject. There's a couple of variables here that are extremely important, one of which is total alkalinity. You absolutely have to test your alkalinity before doing a copper treatment, because copper toxicity is directly related to alkalinity. The lower the alkalinity, the more toxic it can be to your fish. So that's something that you definitely want to do. So you enter that total alkalinity here. It gives you a total pounds to treat your water body. And again, this is drawing off of the numbers above. And one thing with ick is water temperature affects the time periods of its life cycle. So you have to treat according to water temperature. So if your water temperature was 66 degrees, you would treat every other day. But let's say that your water temperature was 75 degrees, then your treatment rate would go up to every day. Okay, moving on, we're going to go to miscellaneous calculators. And again, you'll see that at the top there's a acreage and average depth. And everything on the rest of the page is going to pull from that. So make sure that you fill that in. And right to the right of that, you'll see that it calculates your total water volume and gives you two different outputs. One is gallons and one is acre foot. So 1 acre at 4 foot obviously equals 4 acre foot, or 1.4 million gallons. Now, the next feature you see is water loss or water gain, and that is based on your pumping rate. So first thing you have to know is your evaporation rate. Enter that here, and your pumping rate, and enter that here. And that's going to tell you, based on 1 acre, if you were losing 0.2 inches a day, that would be the equivalent of 5,400 gallons. But if you were pumping 1,100 gallons per hour, you would be gaining 26,400 gallons a day. And this here is max water loss or water gain, which in this case you're pumping more than you're losing to evaporation. So it's telling you that you would gain 20,900 gallons a day. Now, based on that information, if you wanted to increase the lake level by 1 foot, you would enter 12 inches here, and it would tell you roughly how many hours of pumping it would take to get that 12-inch increase. Next feature here is mark and recapture population estimates. Uh, Not a lot of people are really going to use this, but it's a good tool if you have the patience to work with it. It's really a simple process, just not a lot of people are willing to go through it. If you want more information on it, click on your little help there, and there's plenty of information online. Uh, the basics of it is you make a first effort, you go fishing, you catch your fish, you tag them. Then you go back at a later date, make a second effort, and you document how many fish you caught and how many of those fish that were caught were previously tagged. And that gives you an estimated population over the fishing area, or the harvest area. You know, it's not selective only to fishing. The next feature is fish harvesting calculator. In small ponds especially, you're almost always under harvesting. Uh, People don't take nearly enough fish out of their small ponds. Of course, I'm referring primarily to private ponds where there's one owner and one user. Enter your acreage here. If you got a 1 acre pond, it'll give you some basic recommendations on number of fish to remove and what size category those fish should be moved out of. Next page we have tagged fish. This is unfinished at the moment, but if you have tagging equipment, you can enter the tag number here, and you can keep track of when the fish was captured, what its length and weight was, growth over time, all those good things. Next page is water quality, which is currently under construction, so I'm not going to show you that. Next is management key, and you professional guys may not get much help out of this, but for the average pond owner, this is a good thing to run through. It's just a few simple questions that kind of cover the basics here. It starts with a test of your water alkalinity. Say your alkalinity was 21 parts per million, or milligrams per liter, which is close enough to being the same thing. And it's going to give you recommendations based on that. If it's too low, which 21 is too low, it's going to tell you that. It's going to give you some basic information there. And inner pH, water clarity, vegetation coverage, just some basics there for you. We've included a real simple stocking calculator. I'm going to go back and do some alterations to this, but you know, for your average small pond, you just want to have some fish in there. This will work for that. Trophy bass lake, really you need to have more than 1 acre of water to have any sustained bass fishery. More on that later. Like I said, I'm going to go back and change some of that stuff. Harvest records. As I mentioned earlier, harvest is a tool that is underutilized, so this helps people kind of keep track of it. And it also calculates relative weights. You want to try to harvest fish that have low relative weights. That way your healthier fish are left in the pond and they can move on up to the next size category. In this, you just enter your information on time, over time, what was harvested, and it keeps track of it and tells you how many head, inches, pounds, and what the averages were on that. Now the next several pages are just about different species of fish. Smallmouth bass instantly calculates relative weights as before, gives you the length frequencies, has a stock quality preferred, etc., which the sizes are different for all of these fish, and it takes into account all of that. But personally, I don't know anything about smallmouth bass or muskie or pike or walleye or most of these species, so I didn't go into the detail of trying to make recommendations based on what you're catching to what you need to do. But the benefit to this program, as I mentioned before, is that it is all based on industry standards. So once you have this information, just contact your local fisheries biologist, and I'm sure for a small fee they'd be willing to look at this and say, you know, you've got this or that going on, and this is the action that you need to take. Just give you a look at some of the other pages here. And there's walleye, yellow perch, white crappie, black crappie, and I even threw in green sunfish just for giggles there. So that's pretty much it for now. As I said, it's still in development, so there's going to be some changes. There's going to be some things that are added to it. Keep your eyes out because it will be on the market soon. Thanks for watching.